What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be discussing dating in Lima, Peru, and making some comparisons to Medellin, Colombia, of course, because that's where I live. When I Before I was going to come here to Lima, I tried to look online and found very minimal information as far as dating on dating in Lima, Peru. So I definitely hope that the information that I've gathered here will be helpful to someone, because some of this stuff is definitely things that I would have liked to know. So starting off with the first one is dating is slightly easier in Colombia due to the financial dependency. The economy is definitely much better here in Lima, Peru than it is in Medellin, Colombia, or just Colombia in general. So I feel like the women are a little bit more independent. There's a little bit of feminism here, but not too much, nothing too crazy or too bad, nothing compared to the West or the UK or Europe or anything like that. But there is a little bit more independency with the women here. So I do think dating can be slightly easier in Medellin or in Colombia, but like I said, that's primarily due to the financial dependency that a lot of women have on men there in Colombia. I would say women in Lima, or I don't know if this is all of Peru, but especially in Lima, they tend to be very similar to Colombian women as far as communication. And what I mean by that is normally in Colombia, a lot of women just won't call or text you first. Some of you, if you've been to Colombia or dated in Colombia, you will have experienced this. And a big part of why that is because those women don't want to come off as too intense. So they feel like, hey, if the guy wants to talk to me, he'll call me or he'll text me first or initiate the communication. So they don't really do that much there in Medellin or in Colombia in general. And I found that to be my same experience here with the 7 or so dates that I've gone on in the 3 weeks that I've been here. Not very many women are big on reaching out first. Women do dress up more here. You don't see as many jeans and sneakers. I don't know if it's just because it is winter. I am here in July of 2025, and this is kind of like in the middle of their winter. So it is basically gray and cold every day. So, but in general, just as far as style, like I said, I've seen women just naturally tend to dress a little bit more classier or, better here, in my opinion. In Medellin, you'll see a lot of girls basically in like a lingerie top with some jeans and some tennis shoes. Here, there's just more outfits. They dress up more kind of how they do in the States. You'll see like a nice jacket and a dress and some boots or something along the lines of that. Even when going out to nightclubs, more women are wearing dress and heels, and it's not just, showing up in jeans and tennis shoes. As I said, you'll see that a lot in Colombia. Women dress more for comfort there, not so much for fashion and style. The other thing that I did see here is that there are fewer tattoos. You're not getting as many women covered in tattoos. Now, I'm not sure about the rest of Colombia. I've only been to San Andres, Bogota, Cali, and Pereira. And in Medellin specifically, there's like this huge tattoo epidemic where almost every girl has tattoos or a bunch of tattoos. Here, you really don't see that as much. Some do, but not a lot, and definitely not tattoos on like the throat and the neck area. You don't see that at all here. So that's one big difference that I've seen with dating and just physical appearance here as well. The other thing is it's a little bit easier dating here if you're not a fluent Spanish speaker, because there are a lot more women here that do speak English, and I would say definitely are a little bit more educated than the women in Medellin. Now, this is the capital, and in the capital there tends to be more career oriented, more school oriented women. So do keep that in mind. I'm not sure how it is if you're, once you leave outside of Lima and you're dating on the outskirts of Lima or other cities in Peru, like the Inca or Cusco or anything like that, what that dating experience would be like or how those women are. But for the most part, my experience with Peruvian women is definitely a little bit more intelligent or smarter. So definitely more natural women here. You don't see as many women with surgeries. It's just not their culture here. Their culture isn't surrounded around, at least for the women, is not surrounded around looks and beauty to survive, essentially. At least that's how I feel how it is in Medellin, is that a lot of women there are super, super dependent on their looks as for survival, essentially. Here, not so much more natural women. As far as physical appearance, you're not going to find a bunch of 9s and 10s, but I will say that you can find beautiful women here. They are here. They do exist. They're just a lot harder to find. Now, with that being said, you will find a good amount of the ones who are super, super pretty that are going to be monetized as far as either they're maybe in some type of sex work, either some type of sugar baby or looking for a sugar daddy or something along the lines of that. Now, of course, I'm going to say it's not all, but definitely a few that I've run into, that's been the case. And I think it's mainly just because there aren't as many here, so their value is much higher than you would find it in Medellin, where a pretty girl is, you can throw a rock and pretty much hit a pretty girl in Medellin. So I would say more women here have stable family backgrounds, which is really important, I would say, for dating. There's more women here that have a two-parent household or a mother and a father, versus in Medellin, a lot of the fathers tend to not be present or, will leave a lot of the women's lives early. So that creates its own issues as far as when it comes to, their development and how women are in Colombia. So, and a big part of that is because of the cheating and all that stuff. So here in Lima, like I said, you do have more women that have that two-parent household, if that's important to you. I would say in Medellin, in my experience, a lot of my relationships would last 2 or 3 months. And a big part of that is because a lot of women there would start doing things that I don't like poor communication or whatever else it may be, just a ton of different things that I myself would just not like. So a lot of these relationships would just be 2 or 3 months, and then it would be on to basically getting to know someone else. I do feel that here in Lima, that you have a much better opportunity to finding something long-term than you do in Colombia. Now, I will say this, that there are a lot of course, good women in Medellin. They are a lot harder to find, but, you're going to have to go through a lot of bullshit in order to find them, unfortunately. So I feel like that would not be the case here in Lima, Peru. Now, I would say a lot of Peruvians here or Peruanas, they're definitely open to dating foreigners. I would say Lima has had tourism a lot longer, or a higher level of tourism for a lot longer than Medellin has. Medellin, I would say, probably just has started, or Colombia in general has just started really getting popular within the last maybe 4 or 5 years, versus a lot of people have been coming to Lima because you have to stop in Lima first before you get to Machu Picchu. And then also Lima is one of the leading countries as far as culinary, food and all that stuff. So a lot more people from other parts of the world come here, versus in Colombia, it's a large, vast majority of it is just single men from other countries. Now, you do get a lot of other, like I said, foreigners that do go there, but large majority, of course, is men that are visiting. In Cartagena, you did have the cruise ships that would stop there a lot, so they've had tourism for a while, but even still, I would say Peru has been much longer as far as with Machu Picchu. So for the next one I have here, I think I touched on that already. More women speak English here. So overall, also as well with my dating experience, in the few dates that I have had here, I would say only one woman has flaked, which is very, very refreshing in comparison to, what you experience in Colombia, where, flaking is just a part of the culture and it's just something you have to get used to. And surprisingly, no matter how long you live in Colombia, it's still something that's just hard to get used to, especially in Medellin. Now, I've only had one, like I said, one woman actually flake. Other than that, when I have met up with girls, they've been late for the most part, so it's still Latin America. That doesn't change. I would say anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour late. That's pretty normal for Latin America. So, they're not more punctual in Peru than any other country. They're still Latinas and they're still late. As well, I would say all the girls paid for their own transportation. If you've been to Medellin or Colombia, you will get women that will ask you to pay for their Ubers. Here, I've had women come to meet me and they've lived maybe 15, 20 minutes away. And that Uber ride I know is at least $15, and not one of them has asked me to get them an Uber or pay for an Uber. Of course, I paid for their Uber back, but initially, no one asked me for any money as far as coming or asked me to get an Uber for them. Secondly, not one woman here has ever asked me for any money. Out of all the women that I've matched with on dating apps, Instagram, or have met in person, versus in Medellin, that is just something that and expect to happen, is that you're going to get some girl that is going to hit you up for money at some point. Here, hasn't happened. I think it's just, I don't know if it's a pride thing, but also too, it's just different culture, but definitely I would say, it's much better in that sense. Now, overall, my thoughts on dating in Lima, Peru, definitely better than dating in Medellin or in Colombia, or let's just say Peru in general is better than dating in Colombia. Now, are you going to find, as hot of women as you will in Medellin or in Colombia? And the answer to that is no. But I do feel that because the women here do not have beauty to lean on, they do have a little bit more to offer as far as personality and other qualities, versus in Medellin, there's a lot of girls, they just look good, but those good looks tend to come with a lot of headaches and stress and problems and drama. So I do think that dating in Peru is much better than it is dating in Medellin or in Colombia, but this is, I'm going to say, for long term. If you're just looking for short term fun, something that's going to last a few months or something like that, Medellin is perfect. But for the fellas out there that are actually looking for something of quality, definitely is much better here in Peru than it is in Colombia, and especially here in Lima versus in Medellin. Now, like I said, just to recap here, I'm talking about long term. I'm not talking about short term. So that's it for this video, guys. I appreciate you watching. Like always, like, subscribe. If you've been to Peru, please let me know in the comments what's been your experience. What do you think? Do you prefer Peruvian women? Do you prefer Colombian women? And until the next one, peace.